Hello, everyone, and welcome to our podcast Go Global.
We are Sara Zuluaga
Pablo Palacios.
and Laura Herrera.
and today we are going to present the private standards for two specific products, the organic fertilizer and print textbooks for learning kids.
Okay, so what makes this comparison interesting is that both products face environmental concerns. So we see that the role of those concerns is shaping the market access, and also that we see that are completely different one of the other.
Exactly, and that difference is critical because private standards don't operate the same way across markets. In some cases, they act as an optional tool for differentiation, which in others, they function almost as a non tariff barriers that directly affect whether a product can compete or even enter the market.
So the objective of this video podcast is very clear. First, we are going to show the key environmental, social, and ethical concerns for each product. Then we show how private standards emerge as response to those concerns. And finally, we are going to evaluate them for a strategic perspective. Look in the cost, the timelines, the risk, and the value creation.
So now we can begin with the first product, which is printed textbooks. And before selecting any standard, we conducted a diagnostic assessment to identify which concerns actually matter. So, from a life cycle perspective, the most relevant environmental issue is deforestation. So, due to paper sourcing and carbon emissions generated during printing, transportation, and distribution, however, we analyze it and we see that in the target market, that is Saudi Arabia, an important insight emerged. So, while the sustainability is part of national strategies like the Vision 2030, these concerns are not currently strong determinants of market access for imported printed materials.
And that distinction is key because although environmental issues exist, they are not actually enforced as an entry conditions in this specific product category.
In this case, environmental concerns are important but secondary, and that directly shapes how we approach private standards.
Based on the diagnostic, we select two complementary standards. The first one is Forest Stewardship Council.
So we selected FSC because it directly addresses the most product-specific environmental risk. So it's responsible for paper sourcing. Since textbooks are highly dependent on paper, ensuring the sustainable forest management and traceability is critical. To get the FSC certification, we need to follow some steps.
Step 1. Supplier alignment. Identify and contact a FSC certified paper supplier to ensure compliant sourcing from the beginning.
Step 2. Chain of custody system. Implement internal traceability systems to track certified materials across all stages of production and distribution.
Step 3. Documentation setup. Prepare required documentation, including supplier invoices, material declaration, and internal tracking records.
Step 4. Certification application. Apply to an accredited certification body such as SDS or Bureau Veritas.
Step 5. External audit. Undergo third-party verification to access compliance with FSC requirements.
And the step 6, which is certification and monitoring, obtain the certification and maintain compliance through annual audits and reporting obligations.
The second standard is ISO 16759, implement through climate CAL. This focuses on different stages of life cycle emissions from print production, while FSC addresses input. ISO 16759 provides a framework to measure and report carbon emission across the production process.
So, from a consultancy perspective, that what is important is that these standards don't overlap; they complement each other. From an implementation standpoint, FSC certification typically requires supplier verification, so the traceability systems and third-party audits.
Industry estimates suggest a timeline of around 3 to 6 months, with cost depending on company size and scope.
For ISO 16759 and Climate CAL implementation also depends heavily on data availability. Companies need to establish carbon accounting system, which may take between 2 to 6 months, along with more implementation and verification costs.
So the main bottlenecks are not just financial, and since they include data collection, supplier coordination, and internal capacity.
Okay, here we want to explain how to implement climate CAL according to the ISO 16759. So this is according some steps. The step 1 is define system boundaries. It determines the life cycle stage of the textbooks to be included. It covers materials, production, and transport.
Step 2, data collection. Gather detailed data on energy use, paper inputs, printing process, and logistics.
The step 3 is emissions calculation, in which we are going to apply the ISO 16759 methodology using the tools such as Climate Call to quantify the carbon emissions.
Step 4, internal validation. Ensure consistency and accuracy of collected data and calculations.
Step 5. Third-party verification. Engage external auditors to validate emission reporting and methodology.
Step 6. Reporting and communication. Develop carbon footprint reports to support sustainability claims and transparency.
From a strategic perspective, these standards do not function as a strict non-tariff barrier in this market.
Instead, they act primarily as a signal of add value, enhancing credibility, supporting sustainability, positioning, and aligning with global expectations.
However, we see that there is still a trade-off because implementation costs may exceed immediate benefits, especially in the short term.
Based on this, we recommend a phased approach. First, prioritize FSC certification due to its relevance to the product and the relatively lower complexity.
Then, in a second stage, implement ISO 16759 to strengthen long-term sustainability positioning.
So in this case, standards are not barriers, they are strategic tools.
Now, let's move to the second product, where the situation changed completely.
This product is an organic fertilizer made from agricultural waste with input sourced from Peru and processed here in Colombia. So when entering a market like Sweden, sustainability expectations are significantly higher. And this immediately raises several critical concerns. First, heavily metal contamination, particularly cadmium. Second, microbiological risks such as salmonella. Third, traceability challenges due to cross-border sourcing. And finally, environmental risks like water contamination and soil degradation.
And unlike the first case, these concerns are directly linked into the product safety and the market acceptance.
So here, the diagnostic clearly indicates that standards are not optional, they are necessary.
The first standard we select is CRAP, a Swedish organic certification. Its importance depends on the market channel. For agricultural buyers, it may function as a requirement between certifying supply chains. For consumer markets, it acts more as a sustainability signal.
Now we have the steps in order to get the CRAD certification.
Step 1. Regulatory alignment. Ensure compliance with the European Union Regulation 2019-1009 limits on heavy metals such as cadmium.
Step 2. Production adaptation. Adjust processes to meet organic and environmental standards, including microbiological safety requirements.
Step 3. Traceability system. Implement all the traceability across raw materials, especially in cross-border sourcing.
Step 4. Application submission. Apply directly to CRAP or approved certification partners.
Step 5. On-site audit. Undergo inspection to verify compliance with environmental and operational criteria.
Step 6. Certification approval. Obtain certification and maintain compliance through periodic audits.
The second is the environmental product declaration based on ISO 14025. This standard does not certify sustainability directly. Instead, it provides quantified environmental data across the product. Okay, here we want to explain the environmental product declaration. So to implement this specific standard, you have to follow some steps. The step 1 is define the product category rules. So you have to identify applicable standards for the fertilizer category.
Step 2. Life cycle assessment. Conduct a full environmental impact analysis across the product life cycle.
Step 3. Data collection. Gather detailed operational and environmental data from all stages of production.
Step 4. Environmental product declaration drafting. Prepare a structured environmental declaration based on LCA results.
Step 5. Third-party verification. Submit the EPD for independent validation.
Step 6. Registration and publication. Here we register through an operator such as the International EPD system.
Both standards involve significant complexity because EPID requires extensive data collection, life cycle assessment, and third-party verification.
And CRAP requires audits, traceability system, and coordination across suppliers.
So the main bottlenecks are data availability, supply chain coordination, and internal technical capacity.
From an analytical perspective, these standards clearly function as a non-tariff barriers because they increase compliance complexity and may exclude firms without sufficient capacity.
But at the same time, they create value. Like once implemented, they enhance the credibility, the transparency, and also the competitiveness. And in a market like Sweden, that can be like a decisive advantage.
Recommendation is to implement these standards sequentially. First, strength traceability, and internal process.
Then evaluate CRAB depending on the target market. Finally, develop an EPD once reliable data is available. And importantly, maintain communication with buyers to manage expectation during the process.
What this comparison shows is that private standards do not have fixed role.
In some markets, there are optional tools for differentiation.
In others, they become a critical condition for participation.
And that's exactly where consultancy insights matter, understanding not just which standards to adopt, but when, how, and why to implement them strategically.
Do you remember something that I mentioned in the last meeting that is about the organic certification?
Sure.
Okay, the European Union Organic Certification established the legal framework for how organic products must be produced, processed, labeled, and traded within the European Union.
To be marketed as organic, products must comply with strict requirements, including
At least 95% of agricultural ingredients, prohibition of GMOs, strict limitation on pesticides and additives, full traceability across the supply chain, and mandatory certification to an approved control body with annual inspections.
from a trade perspective, this certification clearly functions as a non-tariff barrier.
It imposes administrative, technical, and audit-related requirements that firms must meet before entering the market.
Unlike voluntary standard, this is a pass or fail system, meaning that without certification, the product cannot be sold as organic in the European Union.
Therefore, implementation must align the production process with the European organic rules, then register an accredited certification body and undergo initial inspection and ongoing annual audits.
These involved costs relate to certification fees, compliance adjustment, documentation system, and supply chain coordination.
So the main bottlenecks include traceability requirements, data management, and ensuring consistency across international suppliers.
However, beyond acting as a barrier, the European organic certification also creates value.
It allows firms to use the European Union organic label, the so-called
EuroLeaf,
which signals compliance with consumer trust and enables access to one of the most important organic markets globally.
This is where the distinction becomes important. The EU organic certification represents the baseline requirement, while the private standards like CRAB build on top of it, applying stricter criteria and strengthening credibility, particularly in markets like Sweden.
What this analysis ultimately shows is that internationalization is not just about moving products across borders.
It is about adapting products to the standards, expectations, and values of each specific market.
In the case of organic fertilizer, the adaptation is not optional. The European organic certification acts as the baseline requirement, meaning that without it, the product cannot legally be marketed as organic. On top of that, standards like CRAB and EPD further strengthen the credibility and transparency.
The European organic label and the CRAB logo appear directly on the packaging, signaling compliance and trust on both customers and buyers.
Meanwhile, the EPD may appear through technical documentation and QR codes supporting more information decision making.
Failure to comply in this case has direct consequences, including exclusion from the market, loss of credibility, and inability to access certified supply chains.
However, when we look at parent textbooks and learning kits, the situation is completely different.
Here, sustainability is not embedded into the product by default, it must be actively adopted.
For example, environmental standards like FSC or carbon measurement frameworks must also be integrated strategically.
These standards usually appear more subtly. For example, the FSC logo on the back of a book, indicating responsible sourcing, while carbon-related information may be included in reports rather than directly on the product.
But beyond environmental standards, there is also a critical element of cultural adaptation.
Content in textbooks and learning kits is not universal. It must be aligned with the values, norms, and regulatory expectations of the target market.
This means that the content such as LGBTQ+ themes, which may be present in other markets, is not included as a default feature, but instead must be adapted to comply with the cultural and regulatory context of Saudi Arabia.
So, in this case, compliance is not only environmental, it's also cultural and contextual.
And failure to adapt can result in restricted market access, rejection by authorities, or reputational risk.
So the key takeaway is clear.
Some products require standards to enter the market, others must adopt them along with broader adaptations to remain competitive and acceptable.
Because in global market, success is not determined only by what product is.
But by how well it adapts to where it's going.